I'm glad you're here. I want to lecture. I'd like to talk about in our text on it talks about conducting an organization and to look at when doing a snapshot. One is structure. The second one is demography and politics, and then last of all networks. And I want to focus in particular on structure, and in some cases, structure includes networks. So, um, to give you a little background on this, and it's been a long ago, but in 1995, I was fortunate enough to meet Paul Lawrence, who was a Harvard professor, and developed this model. I met him at in Toronto at it was a conference called the Association for the Management of Organization Design. And Lawrence ran a small group session. And there wasn't there was probably 20 of us in this session or around that. And so it was personal, and we really got to learn a lot from him on this. And at that particular time, the network structure was just emerging. We hadn't seen too much of it. It's the predominant structure today. By the way, Lawrence died in 2011, but he was considered for many years to be the expert on organization structure, and as many of the Harvard psychologists or professors are, he was. Evolutionary psychology was a foundational theory for him. So, last week I talked about the importance or the influence of evolution on systems and organizations. So this is going to continue. Lawrence, in this model, notice that it's a 2x2 model. It talks about diversity of product. In other words, how well defined is the product, how stable is that product, or does it seem to be rapidly changing on an ongoing basis? And then dynamism, or just what is the general rate of change within the industry group. And those two characteristics serve to create the environmental conditions that favor structures the same way as when we talked about certain environmental conditions favor characteristics of animals, well, certain environmental conditions favor characteristics of organizations. So the oldest form here is in this low position is the functional structure, and that's what's considered to be a traditional structure. It's hierarchical. Typically lots of layers. The person at the top makes the decisions. It's very slow decision making. That's why it's not in favor today, that most organizations can't wait for slow decision making. Then as the diversity of the product begins to increase, the divisional structure comes into play, and we saw stages where organizations went through these divisional structures. For example, the auto industry went through these in the probably be the 80s. And then as the environment becomes more dynamic, so the environment's dynamic, but the product's somewhat stable, then you have what's called the X form or the matrix structure. EDS operated in this structure for a long time. Their product was pretty stable and well defined, but they were operating in a dynamic environment. And now today, everything, the environment is a high rate of change. We have diversity of product, and so now the network structure has become the new structure that favors this particular environment. Now, what are some advantages of networks? Well, all task units in vertically integrated firms are rivals, and they're competing with each other for scarce resources. So if you think about this, in a traditional structure or a large organization with a functional structure, scarcity of resources is a defining definition of the organization. In networks, that just completely goes away. In networks, you hire what you need, and of course, it's temporary. I've been working in network structure for a long time, and if I get a consulting job where I need manpower, I simply go into a network and contract manpower for that job. Task units must, to some degree, conform to the dominant culture, standard rules, and procedures of the corporation. So, once again, a network is not bound by those corporate rules, and so the players in a network are able to innovate easier. They can integrate as partners, they avoid rivalry, they avoid competing for resources, and they can be different and unique, and they don't need to conform. In terms of differentiation, they can have their own culture. They usually have unique skill sets. They're small with unique skills. Their goals can be different. Time orientations are different. Decision structure is almost instantaneous. What are the rules in a partnership that operates within a network? Well, honesty and sharing all relevant information, you have to do that because they're seeking the same outcomes, and these outcomes have to be win-win. You can't disadvantage a partner. You have to do what you're going to say you're going to do, so integrity is a part of a network. And the rules are self-enforcing. If someone doesn't comply, they're dropped out of the network. That's the end of it. So the overall advantages are free information flow. The market process uses the most competent suppliers, so it favors specializing. And as diversity and dynamism increase, so should decentralization, and networks are as decentralized as you can get. All right, Dan Duncan is a consultant in organization design, and from his work, what are some symptoms of deficient structure? Decision making is overloaded or delayed. Delegation to lower levels is insufficient. Matter of fact, when things get bad, organizations tend to centralize decision making, which makes things even worse. So delegation to lower levels is non-existent. Information is not reaching the correct people. The organization is not responding to a changing environment. Remind me, there was a company in the area, it was called, and it was a very successful company, and they were a distributor of CDs nationwide, and they went out of business, and the reason why, they weren't able to find a way to adapt with electronic music being downloaded on the internet. Too much conflict in an organization, another sign of bad structure. All right, this comes from Duncan as well, and I thought we'd have a little bit of fun with this, and Duncan did the research on it. And so the question is, when it comes to organizational structure, just exactly what is new? Is decentralization something that is new? And nope, as you can see here, the Egyptians wrote on this subject in 2600 BC. How about alignment of staff functions? Nope, Egyptians wrote on that too. Okay, let's see what else we have here. What about organizing around process? No, Chinese did this in 1 AD. Structure and cohesiveness? Nope, Italians did this in 1525. What about using organizational principles as central to structure? No, it was published here in 1855. What about org charts? Are they new? Nope. They came out in 1856. What about networks? I mean, we know that Lawrence talked about them in 95. They were actually published in 1911, so we've had networks that long. It's just the difference is they were not, the environment didn't favor networks in 1911, where the environment today in 2013 does favor networks. What about virtual organizations? We're really seeing a lot of that today with global organizations, and Duncan says no, it's hundreds, perhaps thousands of years old, and the construction industry is an example. It's always been a virtual organization. The general contractor is essentially a coordinator among peers related by a contract for a short period of time. I might go so far to say organization and development and consulting has been like this for years too, and it's even more so today that consulting companies are even smaller and more specialized, and there's lots of independents that are bound together through networks, and they work quite well, by the way. I will be posting a transcript on this lecture along with these resources. Thank you.